Go. I have to see the parameters of my board so I can get it on videotape. There we go. That's mine, as far as I can go. All right, so today we're actually going over operations. With radicals. So we're going to add, we're going to subtract, and we are going to multiply radicals. So example 1, you are to simplify. Grab a blue pen. All right, so question A. I'll move out of your way in a minute. 6 radical 5. This is a tough one. 2 radical 5 minus 5 radical 5. When you add and subtract radicals, what do you have to have? Everybody should be writing. Everybody. You have to have like radicals. So do I have all the same radicals? Yeah, this is no different than doing 6x plus 2x minus 5x. If there were x's, what would your answer be? 3x, right? So same thing with radicals. If I have 6 of these radicals and I add 2 of those radicals, I get 8 rad 5 minus 5 rad 5. And if I have 8 of those radicals and I subtract 5 of those radicals, I end up with 3 rad 5 radicals. The radical doesn't change. Same thing in like terms. If that radical represented an x, it wouldn't change. It would still be an x. So try this one on your own. 7 radical 2 plus 8 radical 11. Are those like radicals? Nope. Plus 4 rad 11. I'm sorry, minus 4 rad 11. And then minus 6 radical 2. So simplify that on your own. I like to identify like radicals with single double underlines. So what's a like radical to 7 rad 2? And so what do those two combine to give you? 1 rad 2, but we don't write a 1, so we just write a radical 2. And so then that leaves these two as like radicals. And what do you get there? A positive 4 radical 11. And then there's your answer. Bless you. Yes. Yes, these can be flipped, as long as you keep the sign with the radical. Okay? All right, so let's look at the next example. So example 2, we're still simplifying. Question A. So this time I have 6 radical 27 plus 8 radical 12 plus 2 radical 75. Are those like radicals? Yes or no? No. So right now I can't add any of them together. Do they have the possibility of simplifying? Sure. So doesn't 27 break into 3 3s? Wake up, Austin. His eyeballs are drooping. So I could pair up one set of 3s and bring it out in front of that 6, right? whatever I pull out in front, I have to multiply to anything that's already out in front. So that pair of 3's comes out in front, but I have to multiply it to the 6, so I get 18. Radical, don't I have a 3 left over? So that stays underneath. And then the 12 breaks into what? 2, 2, and 3. Can't I take out a pair of 2's and multiply it to that 8 that's in front? So I get a positive 16. I'm left with a 3, radical 3. Now those are like radicals, correct? Then simplify your 75. What multiplies to give you 75? 5, 5, and 3. And so I can take out a pair of 5's and multiply that to what's in front, that 2. And I end up with positive 5 times 2 is 10. The 3 is left over, so it stays under the radical. And it just so happens that what's left over are all red 3's. If they weren't, you could only add up what was the same. So what do I end up getting? What do they all add up to? 18 plus 16 plus 10 is 44. So I get 44 radical 3's. So try this one on your own. 2 square root of 50, that's a 50, minus 3 square root of 32. Everybody's working. If I have to be here on a Friday at 7:50, so do you. So what'd you end up getting? Yep, so 10 minus 12 is negative 2, red 2. Now, when I simplified or factored 32, I didn't factor it into its primes. I could have, right? So some of you had 5 2's down here, right? 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So you took out 2 pairs of 2's. So instead of a 4 out here, you had 2 times 2 times 3. Isn't that the same thing? Some of you, did anybody do 16 times 2? Nobody? You're just not going to admit it. If I did 16 times 2, couldn't I have taken the square root of 16 and pulled that out in front? Either way. Same thing here, I could have done 25 times 2, taking the square root of 25. So there's a multitude of ways that you can simplify those, do what's best and works best for you. All right, then we're going to multiply. So example 3, multiply. Let's start easy. So you did some multiplying yesterday with your conjugates, right? And what did I say that you had to do? Multiply what to what? Outside to what? Outside and inside to inside. That's all you have to remember. So if you don't have 2 radicals to multiply together, then you just tack a radical on. So for instance, I'm going to multiply these 2 together. Really what's outside these are 1. 1 times 1 is 1. What's inside is 6 times 3. Oftentimes I won't actually multiply them out because I know I might have to simplify. So instead of multiplying 6 times 3 and making it 18, can't I factor as I go? Can't I make this into 2 times 3 times 3? Why would I want to do that? It saves me time, doesn't it? So that's my first multiplication. And then I'm going to multiply these together. So remember, what's outside here is a 1. So 1 times 5 is a positive 5, square root. And then again, instead of multiplying 6 times 2, I'm going to change the 6 this time into 3 times 2 because I know I have a 2 coming. So again, it saves me time. I won't always multiply that product underneath that radical together. So now I can take out my pair of 3's out in front. I can take out a pair of 2's out in front, but I have to remember to multiply it to the 5. So here I end up with 3 radical what? 2 plus 10 radical 3. Are those like radicals? So I can't add them. This is my final answer. So for B, this time we're going to multiply something a little bit more difficult. 4 radical 5 minus 2 radical 3 and parentheses. New parentheses, 3 radical 6 minus radical 10. So I have a binomial times a binomial, right? Don't we double distribute or FOIL? So I'm going to multiply those two together. Outside to outside, 4 times 3 is 12. Inside to inside, 5 times 6. Is there any reason for me to not multiply these together? The 6 is 2 and a 3. Will it combine with that 5? So here's a situation where I might actually multiply them together. 5 times 3 is 30. 30 cannot be simplified. Then I'm going to multiply these two together. I really have a negative 1 here out in front. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, square root. 5 times 10, is there something in the 10 that can combine with a 5? Another 5. So I'm going to keep the 5 as a 5 and break the 10 up as 5 times 2. Then I'm going to multiply my second distribution, which is the negative 2 rad 3. So I'm going to multiply those two together. So negative 2 times positive 3, negative 6, square root. Is there anything in the 6 that will combine with that 3? A 3. So I'm going to keep that 3 times, and the 6 becomes 3 times 2. And then the last multiplication, a negative 2 times a negative 1 gives me a positive 2, square root. And is there anything in the 3 that's going to combine with the 10? No. So 3 times 10 is 30, and that cannot be simplified. So before I try to collect like terms, I need to simplify the 2 radicals that I have factored out. So I'm going to take out a pair of 5's out in front and multiply that to the 4. And I'm going to take out a pair of 3's here and multiply that to the 6. So I really have 12 radical 30 minus 5 times 4 is 20. Radical, I have a 2 left over. Minus 6 times 3 is 18. Radical, I have a 2 left over. And then plus 2, radical 30. You combine those and tell me what the final answer is. Is that your answer? What? Yes. Could I have these flipped around and have the negative 38 read to first? Sure. It's fine. There's no rhyme or reason to which has to come first. All right, last one. And it's multiplication. So same instructions, but C, I want you to try this one on your own. 7 minus the square root of 10 squared. 7 minus the square root of 10 squared. Warning bell should be going off in your head, just saying. Be careful. There will be a radical in your answer. Your answer is not 39. This is not the difference of two squares factor pattern. Think of what it really means to have 7 minus radical 10 squared and write out what it really means and do the multiplication. What does it really mean? What does it really mean? What are you multiplying this by? Itself, right? So isn't it really 7 minus square root of 10? 7 minus square root of 10? If you do a double distribution on this, you will have a radical in your answer. You do get 7 times 7 is 49. But what's 7 times negative rad 10? This is a negative 1 in front, right? So 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. There's no radical to multiply it to, so don't we just tack it on? I mean, if I were doing 7 times negative x, what would you tell me? 7 times negative x. Wouldn't you say negative 7x? So same thing here, you're just tacking that radical on, because you can't multiply it to anything. And so then we're going to distribute the second distribution, which is the negative rad 10. Don't I get another negative 7 rad 10? Remember with squared binomials, your inner and outer terms are supposed to be exactly the same. Remember that test pattern for 2ab? It's 2ab because we have two of the same. And then your last multiplication is here. What's a negative 1 times a negative 1? Positive. What's rad 10 times rad 10? 10. So it's not a minus 10, it's a positive 10. And so now I can combine the 49 and the 10, and I actually get 59. And then I can combine these radicals. What's negative 7 rad 10 and another negative 7 rad 10? Negative 14 radical 10. So be really careful with squared binomials. And this is why, on the conjugates, we don't square, we don't multiply. If we had this as a denominator and a fraction, we don't multiply that denominator by itself, like we would if it were just a rad 10 in there. Because if we multiply that denominator by itself, we get an answer with a radical, and we end up still with a radical in that denominator. So that's why we don't square it. Other questions related to operations?